you?
Hi, I'm all right, thanks. How are you?
I'm also good, thank you. Thank you for joining this call today. For this particular channel, today we'll be discussing evolutionary biology and your experience in that. So, can you please tell me a little bit about your background and what inspired you to become a biologist?
That's a very difficult question. As I'm Dutch, I grew up in the Netherlands. I always been somehow like in touch with nature. When I was very little, temporarily, we lived in a former shed that was transformed into a house of a farm where they had cows and things like that. And I was always busy looking at the animals. And I was like 3, 4 years old or something. And I said I wanted to be a farmer. Um, I changed my ideas regarding that, but I guess it shows more or less that I always had something with animals, with nature. When I was that young as well, we had this membership for a zoo that was nearby. And one of the most amazing things I found in that zoo at that time was leaf cutting ants. They had a colony of leaf cutting ants, and they had these plastic glass tubes where you could see the ants walking around with the leaves. And you could just find me there, like staring at them for a long time. Then in high school, we had to choose, like in the Netherlands, there's like different systems than in many other countries. And I had to choose a certain set of subjects. I always liked biology for some reason. I guess always been in touch with nature. Also, my dad and my grandpa, they really love birds. As a free time hobby, my grandpa used to catch birds and put rings on them for counting and measuring the wing size and to check the status of the species in the country. So I grew up watching birds. We used to go hiking in the mountains, looking at the wild animals that we could find there, the plants that you could find there. So I guess in that sense, I've always had this connection somehow with nature. So when I was in high school, as one of my most important subjects, I decided to take biology. And then when I had to make a choice for a university and for something to study, I still wasn't sure I was going to do biology. In the Netherlands, it's very advised you go visit many universities and different courses before you actually make the choice. So I visited various different ones, and I looked things like biochemistry, chemistry, pharmaceutical sciences, all those kind of things. But when I came to my university in Wageningen, the Wageningen University and Research Center, and I looked at biology there, like the people were so friendly. The professors used their first names to address themselves. They had all these different specializations, and I was like, I feel at home here. This is nice. I like this. At that time, I also was like, well, biology, I think, is the thing that I really like. So I decided to study there. And it's a very small university compared to other universities in the Netherlands. It's also because not only it's in a very small town, the town has like 40,000 inhabitants. So it's very small, even for Dutch standards. But also the university is a life science university. So it doesn't have medicine or things like law. So it's very focused on the life sciences, on biology, on plant sciences, on animal sciences, food technology, all those kind of studies that you can find there. It was really interesting to be in that environment. And how I got to evolutionary biology, in our second year, we had to choose a specialization for biology. And we had 5 options: cell biology, which is focusing on how cells work, but also like the interaction with other organisms, very into the detail of like how biology is connecting everything, right? Plant sciences focuses on plants, animal sciences, ecology, and theoretical biology. Everybody knew that theoretical biology was very hard. I wasn't that interested in focusing on one specific thing like plants or animals. So I went for ecology. And the funny thing is that from the first year, we had a group of friends. And with some of those friends, we chose the specialization ecology. And from the first year, we were already joking like, we're biologists, we're going to be jobless. And then after we chose the specialization, we were joking even more because the ones that chose ecology, like me, we were like, we are going to be the jobless ones. We chose ecology. Like, you guys in plant science can go like do crop improvement and things like that. You'll find a job. I guess like during that whole time, evolutionary biology is part of biology. So any of those courses, you will get little bits of that everywhere. So I started as an ecologist. And one of the things that really interested me was the interaction of different organisms with each other. So when I got into my master's part, I also did like a master's in the specialization in ecology for biology. I had to do a thesis. And one of the things you could do is like, you could do also multiple theses. And since I still had no idea what I exactly wanted to do, I was like, well, I'll do that. So the first one was on the interaction between different grazers in Africa. In Africa, there's the largest concentration of species of grazers. So you have elephants, you have rhinos, you have all the smaller impala and things like that. And they have this interaction with each other, whereas some of them follow others around in a process that we like to call facilitation. So one is preparing the feeding grounds, the grass, like they ate all the long grass. So the ones after that can eat the shorter grass. So it's not affecting the first one, but it does have a positive effect on the second one. So I did a thesis on that, which didn't really work out that much. And it was a lot of programming and computer work. And I was like, well, I'm not so sure. But during one of the courses that I had done before, which was at the group that was called Genetics, they actually did a lot of work with fungi. And in a very small project, which was like one of the short courses, I had done that with a friend so well that they said, well, if you ever want to do a thesis, you're more than welcome to come here. So I was like, let's give that a try. And there was a professor in that group, who became my thesis supervisor, who was working on the fungus grown by termites. Some of those termites you have also in India. They grow a fungus called Termitomyces. Apparently, very tasty mushrooms. They grow on the termite mounds. So I don't know if you ever ate those. I haven't had the luck to get those yet. I would love to try them. But they are from Africa all the way to Southeast Asia, like Indonesia, Thailand, India as well. So I did a project on that, working on the fungus to see how they process the plant material. So basically, I put the fungus and I put it on very different, what we call growth media. So different food sources and see how they were doing, like different kinds of sugars, different kinds of other materials that they might like, and just score, like they do well on this one, they do not so well on this one, to try and get like a picture of what is this fungus actually breaking down? Why do these termites would like to have this particular fungus? And my supervisor, Duran, he said, are you still planning to do like an internship abroad? Because I know this group in Copenhagen, they work on fungus growing ants, the leaf cutting ants. So maybe that's a good idea. And I can set you up with a contact. So I first was thinking like, do I want to do that? Yeah, why not? I mean, I like this. Let's go with that system. So I was accepted to come to Copenhagen, and I worked for 5 months on ant colonies. They have the ant colonies there. Like they collect them in Panama, then bring them back in Copenhagen. They have them in climate chambers. So you can do lots of experiments with that. And I started giving them different things. Like I had a couple of colonies, like the standard colony in the lab there, we gave bramble leaves, rice, and apple. That seemed to be a very nice combination they like, and the fungus is growing very well on that. So what we were thinking, like, okay, what if we switch to only one food source? How will they behave then? And how will the enzymes change that? Because the enzymes, they are important for breaking down the material, right? And to obtain the energy to grow. So I decided to one set of the colonies, I was only giving bramble leaves, and one set only rice. It's like a sort of fast food, because rice has a lot of sugars, but doesn't have a lot of other nutrients in there. Like for us, if we only ate rice, we'll get nutritional problems. Very common in poor countries where you see like the babies with the very big bellies. That's because of nutritional imbalance. So we did the same to the ants and see what happens and measure how the enzymes would change. And there was a big change in a few days. And towards the end of the experiment, I could see the ones that I gave leaves, the ants were happy. They were fine, like normal. But the ones with rice, they were sitting inside their colony against the fungus, just sitting there, being slow, being lazy, as if they were not getting the energy that they need. That was really interesting, I thought. And then I was searching for a PhD, and my supervisor there, who was also a Dutch person, by the way, Koos Boomsma, in agreement with him, I was able to arrange a PhD position there in Copenhagen. So then I was in Copenhagen for my PhD for 3.5 years, with before that a short research assistantship, and after that a postdoc, focusing on the fungus growing ants. So basically I ended up studying the thing that I was looking at as a little kid when I was going to the zoo, without even realizing that. I only realized that much later, when I was already working very much on that system. During that PhD, because of the group that I was, they were very focused on the evolution of the ants, but I was more focusing on the fungus. And coming in as an ecologist, it was very interesting because it changed my mind much more into the evolutionary mind setting. And I started to get much more interested in that, because ecology is amazing, but how did it all start? Why are they doing this? Why didn't they start doing something different? Why didn't they choose another fungus, for example? So after my PhD there, I decided, okay, I know a lot about the ants now. I'm working mostly on the fungus, but I don't know much about the fungus, and especially not about the history of the fungus. what is related to it? Like, how did that evolve? And in my field of fungus growing ants, there's almost nobody actually looking into those kind of things. So then I was like, where would I be able to do that? And then I found a contact in Kew Gardens in London, where they have the largest collection of fungi in the world. And they were very interested in having me there as well. So I applied for a job there. I got in for 5 years as a early career researcher looking in the evolution of the fungus. So while in Copenhagen, I was the fungus man with all the ant scientists. Suddenly I became the ant man between all the mycologists and botanists, even though I work with both. They are both important. And I do have more focus on the fungus because I think there's much more to study there. And throughout my whole career until then, I always had this in mind that I would like to go to Brazil at some point, because over here, there's several groups that work with these ants. And the evolutionary theory is it started in the Amazon. So what better way to try and find the origin of the fungus in the place where it all started? And then on top of that, I met Sabrina, my fiance, who is Brazilian, which gave an extra push to, okay, let's do this. And I had some friend colleagues over here who had some opportunities to come over here. So that's how I got to this point here. And now I'm in one of the labs here in Rio Claro, mostly to raise the internationality of the university and of the group. So I'm helping out a lot of the students, but at the same time, I have my own little project trying to find the origin of these fungi. So when I can, which hasn't been very easy these last 2 years with the pandemic, I go out and try and collect mushrooms that are similar to the ones from the ants and study those, try and see like which species are they related to the ants. And I actually just submitted a proposal for a big study for 5 years. So fingers crossed that I will get the funds for that. Looking at one of the most interesting things for me regarding this whole system is the asexuality of the fungus. This is a fungus that normally, if it would exist without ants, should be able to grow mushrooms. It's in a group where we also have the portobello mushrooms, for example. So they're very tasty. I don't know if the ones from the ants are tasty. I never tried that. It's a very interesting group, but these ones, if you look through all the literature in history, almost never seem to grow mushrooms. And in an evolutionary sense, that makes sense, because the ants, what they do is when they start new colonies, the new queens, they put a little piece of fungus in a pocket that they have in their mouth. They fly away, they mate with a male, and then they start making a new colony where they spit out the fungus and they start growing the fungus with that. This is a process that we call vertical transmission. So it comes down from a mother to daughter. And because of that, they don't need mushrooms, because mushrooms are produced to release spores, to spread around. You can see spores kind of like pollen of flowers. They will find other spores, they will merge together and form a new baby fungus. And at some point that will start growing mushrooms again and the whole cycle starts over. And because the ants are transferring the fungus, the mushrooms are not necessary. And if you would produce a mushroom, that's a lot of energy, and it's not something the ants would be able to eat or something, because it's the mushroom that's a structure that is not nutritionally very valuable for the ants. So one thing that I saw, for example, when I was doing my PhD in Copenhagen, we had a few times mushrooms coming up when we had problems with the climate change. So we had like a temperature drop, a sudden drop in the humidity, things like that. And then we had a mushroom. And then the ants immediately attacked it. They were cutting it. They were trying to remove everything as soon as possible. So they really don't like it. They don't want it. So one of the things that I really became curious about is like, okay, it's very important for this to stay asexual, but how does that work? Because the free living mushrooms that are related to it, they grow mushrooms, the ones that are not living with ants. So how is this regulated? Are the ants doing something? Is this just purely through evolutionary processes, like filtered out the possibility to grow these mushrooms, things like that. So hopefully I'll get the funds for that to really dig into that, because that's really my interest.
So is your research also related to climate change, right? Like current research that you have given your proposal for?
So that's very interesting that you say that and ask that. It's one of the things that they didn't understand very well from the BBC. It's the only thing.
Okay.
I did one study, and initially that was not even the idea to look at climate change. The student that is the lead author of that paper, he saw a lot of these mushrooms suddenly coming up. on a particular ant species. So he started counting them, and we decided, okay, we now have all this data from you with all these numbers of how many times they occur. Let's see how that was in the past. And we didn't find that much. And it seems if we put that on a timeline, it seemed like it was getting worse and worse, like more and more. And since we know that the ants don't like that, there must be something happening. There must be something going wrong. And if we then think what in the world is changing, well, the climate is changing. So then I had the idea together with the others, okay, since climate is changing over time and these mushrooms are changing over time, let's have a look if we can find a correlation between them. Of course, correlation is not causation. We don't know for sure if the climate change has an effect on this, but it seems like it. At least there's a correlation. Like the climate here in this area is getting more extreme. So the winters are more dry and the summers, they tend to be more wet. And also the overall temperature is increasing. And it seems that is a perfect combination of climatic factors that seem to be helping to increase the number of mushrooms that we see in these ant colonies. So yes, I did a study on climate change with these ants, but it was not the focal study of my research.
Yeah, because I read your article in the BBC's Science, and then at the end they had written that you're currently working on climate.
Yes.
So I
know. That was the only thing that I was like, yeah, that's not really correct, but whatever, it's fine.
Yeah. So
I am interested in climate change.
Yeah. So as a researcher, what's your day-to-day like?
So right now, my day-to-day life as a researcher is very different because of the pandemic. I work from home almost all the time because the university, it's not 100% closed, but it's practically closed. And only people doing research at the moment, they are allowed to go in. And since I'm not doing a lot of lab work at this moment, and since starting lab work would be quite a hassle in this situation, I still have a lot of data on my computer. I was like, I'll just focus on that because that needs to be done at some point anyway. So now is a good time to start working on that. So my day-to-day life at this moment is quite boring. To be honest. So at the moment, I'm just mostly sitting behind my computer, running analysis on data that I have, writing things. I have meetings with students that are in the lab. Soon, I will be starting teaching again, a course that we have. So I need to prepare some things for that, writing papers, writing proposals, all those kind of things. It's not very exciting. However, outside of pandemic time, a day-to-day life, it differs. Also, it's different per stage of your career. I'm starting to get at the point of my career where I'm doing a lot more supervision of students. So I'm more desk-based now, but I still do lab work. And if I get the funds for this project, I will do a lot of things in the lab. I like to call myself kind of an all-rounder. I do field work. I do experiments in the lab, growing the fungus on different things. I also do a lot of genetics and genomics, which means I will have to do things in the lab for that. But most of the work that is done with genomics is on the computer. So I do a lot of script writing and things like that, trying to make sense of a lot of code that comes back, a lot of abbreviated names of things that even I don't know what they mean because there's so many abbreviations for genes, for enzymes, for everything. So I'm trying to make sense of all of that. But the best thing to do is field work for me. And even though after a week, especially after 2 weeks, I'm exhausted and I really want to go back home, the best thing is just to walk in nature, look for mushrooms, look for the ants and collect them, just dig them up, record everything that we see.
Is this kind of field work common for biologists? Like, do they get to travel a lot?
That depends. Biology is such a big subject. It really depends on your specialization. I see myself as an all-rounder because I do many things. I do ecology. I do genomics. I even do taxonomy. So taxonomy is the discovery of new species, the understanding of the evolutionary history of species and things like that. And for that, I need to go out and I need to collect mushrooms. As a side note regarding that, for example, for plants, we know about 80% of all the species that we think exist. For fungi, we as scientists, we have described around 150,000 species at the moment.
Wow.
That's nothing. We think there is about 4 million species in the world.
Wow. That is the field work, digging out like new species.
Exactly. So that means that we only know the tip of the iceberg of all the diversity of fungi that is out there. There's still so much work they've been doing calculations in the rate of species description at this moment. If we continue in this rate, it will take about 3,000 years or something to describe all the fungal species.
Wow. Until then, I think more will be there, right?
A lot will be extinct already because of climate change. And this is where climate change comes in again. Species are rapidly disappearing. There is new species coming, but we are losing more species at the moment than new ones are coming in. So if it's still going to take 3,000 years to describe all the species, we will not even be able to describe them all because we have already lost so many.
Yeah.
Because every year we lose. So it's very important that we keep doing that. So this is a shout out to the world. We need more mycologists studying fungi, describing them. But even if you want to do like taxonomy or something, you could do that in almost every country that you are. So it really depends on what you're interested in. Personally, I would say don't choose a subject because you go to travel a lot. Choose a subject that you are passionate about. And if you then get to travel a lot for that, that's a bonus. I chose to work on fungatory ants because I found them incredibly interesting, and I still do. I'm very passionate about them. And as a bonus, I got to travel to Panama many times to do field work there. I'm now here in Brazil going to different places to study them.
Yeah, I think in terms of exposure, whether it was to work or study, you had quite a lot of exposure. So what do you think, let's say in a country like India or anywhere, what should they do differently so that they can have this kind of exposure? And also you can say it like a successful career as a biologist.
So as a successful career as a biologist or as any scientist for that matter, one thing I think is very important is having experience in a lab in a different country. Already, if you go to a different lab in the same country, you will get some different experience, but you're still in the same culture. Cultural differences are really important for how research is done as well. So I encourage everyone in any country to go abroad. It's important for your career, for your way of thinking regarding science, but also for your personal development. It opens your mind to different cultures, to different ways. You start to see things about your own country, for example, that you're like, why the hell are we doing that? It's like, it's very mind-opening to do that. And it's very important. I think any person, if they have the possibility, they should do that. Of course, it's not easy. Like not everybody has the privilege that I have. I'm very well aware that I'm very privileged as a white European person. But there's programs out there. I don't know too much about the programs because I never needed them. But there's programs out there. There's programs for women. There's programs for low economy countries to go study in, for example, the United States or in Europe. Of course, you don't only have to go to Europe or the US. I mean, a country like Brazil, even with a political situation that is not very favorable for science at the moment, there's amazing scientists here, absolutely amazing scientists. There's so much knowledge here in this country. It's mind-blowing. So when you think of going abroad, don't just think about the hot shots. Think about the whole world. What would be interesting for my study subject, for example. In the first year that I was here, I organized a workshop on working and studying abroad. I organized that together with my colleague who is hosting me here. Two people that have the same kind of brand as me. One was a Brazilian girl who studied abroad for a long time and came back. The other guy was a guy from Spain who came here to do something similar as me. Completely different study, of course, different subject, but in the same type of program. And we were talking to the people in the workshop, like why to go study abroad, how, and what to think about. If you already done your PhD, for example, like I did. I studied my PhD in a group that focuses on ants, where I was looking at the fungus. And I decided that I wanted to know more about the fungus. Well, where can I do that? Let's have a look at that. So it's like try and find a group that has nothing to do with my system, but they might be able to teach me something that will help me understand my system better. Another thing you could think of is, okay, I really want to learn to work with this particular technique. So try and find a lab in the world that uses that. For example, if you are very focused on a particular plant group or something, and then you think like, I want to do genomics with this. Where do they have the expertise on genomics? And it can be that you just need to say for a few years, like, okay, I'm not going to work on my system. I'm going to work on something completely different just to learn this technique. So later I can put the two together, my system with the new technique. It's just the experience. It's enriching. Living in another country, all the things that come with that, different language, a different culture, different ways of people. It's very important and very, very exciting.
Yeah. So recently, like I think a couple of weeks back, I was talking to one of my cousins and she's doing a master's in biology. And she was saying that I don't know what I'll do after I graduate. So there is a lack of clarity. So it's like if you had to convince someone to pursue a successful career in biology, what would you say?
What would I say? What are you passionate about? It's the first thing I would ask. One thing that I hear a lot, and I already heard that a lot when I was studying, is people saying, I want to do something that will change things. What I'm doing, my work, is what we call fundamental research. It's not directly changing things, but people need to realize fundamental research is, as the name says, the fundament of anything that comes after that. For example, because of the way humans are doing agriculture, leaf cutting ants tend to become a pest species, even though they are in their native range. So they are supposed to be here. But because people are growing crops massively, that becomes like a very beautiful resource, right, for leaf cutting ants. Easy to grab plant material. So people will have problems with them. I'm not studying on how to solve that problem. However, the things that I discover, another scientist might be able to grab that information and apply that to develop something that can help to prevent something like that happening. So the first question would really be like, what are you passionate about? Are you really passionate about helping people in finding a solution for something? Or are you really passionate about how something works in a body, how a blood vessel works? That's different things. Are you really interested in why flowers have a certain shape? That's the most important thing. You need to be passionate about something.
Yeah, I think that's a great point that you have said. Passion is so important in order to be successful in anything, because after a certain point, you need to show consistency, and consistency only comes if you have some sort of passion. We are passionate about helping people or solving a problem and that kind of thing. So that being said, I wanted to congratulate you for your feature in BBC's Science Focus. I think that
Thanks.
was great. So apart from that, my final question to you is, what has been the highlight of your career?
I guess there's a couple. One of them is I was a co-author of a children's book. It's in the series of Welcome to the Museum. It's called Fungarium. Together with the people at Kew Gardens, with the mycologist, we produced a book together with an amazing artist. She draws the drawings. If you Google Fungarium book, you will find it. It's on Amazon. It's already translated in various languages. It has beautiful artwork that we checked as scientists if they were accurate. We first gave her some pictures, and then she picked like, I want to draw this one and this one. And then when something was just a little bit off, we said, you have to change that in this way. And then we wrote the stories with them. So I wrote 2 of the chapters, one on fungus growing ants and termites, of course, and the other one on pathogenic fungi of insects. And I helped out also with like correcting the other stories. It was like a joint effort of everyone. So that is definitely one of the highlights, to be able to produce that. The whole group, we are very proud of the product that we in the end released with that. And it's sold worldwide. So that's amazing. And it's helping children, but also adults, to become familiar with fungi and even with the science of fungi, because we are talking about scientific things in there in a light way. But it brings the importance of fungi, like in all their diversity, from edible ones to poisonous ones to diseases to ones that we use for making medicines, because it's extremely diverse what they do. So that's definitely one of the highlights. Another one is, you mentioned in one of the questions that you said, like my research that I did in Colombia. So Colombia has been in a civil war for a very long time. And some years ago, they were able to sign a peace agreement with the main rebel force. And the president at that time thought it was a good moment to also start exploiting the more quiet time to do more biological research, to investigate the biological resources that they have and how they are able to utilize that in the future. And they decided to ask the United Kingdom to get involved in that, to share expertise and to help build research regarding that. And Kew Gardens got involved in that. And I was able, together with the mycologist group, but I was leading that, to get a big pot of money, a big fund to do research in that. And we involved several Colombian students, many Colombian researchers to do research there. And we went 2 times for 2 weeks. We went there just finding fungi, anything. The idea was to look into the whole fungal diversity. So not just mushrooms, also lichens. They are fungi in collaboration with bacteria or algae. We took root samples because there's fungi in there. We took leaves because in leaves we can find fungi, anything. And we did that in a very strategic way. But the most interesting thing is that we did that in locations that haven't been studied very much. So in the second trip, for example, I was at 4,000 meter high, barely able to breathe. My body is really, as a Dutch person coming from very low lands, 4,000 meters is extreme, but it was an amazing experience. We saw the most amazing fungi there in all those places, and being able to work with people there that know about the areas, etc., was an amazing experience as well.
Yeah, I have actually seen that video, and what I'll do in this description box once we post this, I'll add a link to that video because it was really nice. So, yeah.
Yeah, that was from the first trip. It was very enjoyable to do both trips. It was really, really nice. We had a very nice group of people working with us. I'm still friends with most of them. So that was really great experience. Another amazing experience culturally and biologically is with Q, they organize a master's course every year. So if you are interested in plant taxonomy, in fungal taxonomy, or if you want to learn about that, I can highly recommend that. It's a 1-year course. And one of the things they do is go on a 2-week trip to Madagascar because Q has a collaboration with a research center there with local researchers there. They set up this research center. So they have a strong connection with the country. So we went there for 2 weeks. I joined at one time as a teacher to teach how to collect mushrooms in the field or how to collect fungi in the field and do basic identifications on them. And being in a country with such amazing, strange nature, like chameleons, like lemurs, mind-blowing. But at the same time, it was a huge shock for me to see the extreme poverty that is in that country. I'm not sure if all people that were on those trips really realized that or really paid attention to that, but it drained me in a way. It burned a hole in my heart to see that. And it made me realize even more. I already knew, but it realized me even more how privileged I am coming from a European country. It's a highlight, but at the same time, like a sort of depressing highlight. It had like an extreme high point and very extreme low point at the same time. And I think it's something that we should never forget. And we should work in the world towards like make sure that is disappearing somehow. So I think those three were definitely so far the highlights of my career.
Yeah, I actually loved all three of them because the first one, obviously, it helps children to gain interest into the field from a very young age. And I think that's really helpful. And the last one that you said, it's really heart touching for me. And I feel that privilege is not something that we choose. You know, it's like we don't choose to be born in a part of a world.
Exactly.
But it's like if we are privileged, then it becomes our responsibility in some way to give back to the community. And I'm so glad that you're doing it.
I'm trying. I feel I should be able to do more. I just often don't know how exactly. So if anyone has tips on that, please let me know. And I'll see if I can implement more.
Yeah. And are you planning on coming to India for your research anytime soon?
Not for my research. I would love to visit India. I love the food. I love the people. The Indian friends that I met through Sabrina, they're absolutely amazing.
I'm one of them.
Exactly. I've had friends visiting there, and you guys make everything so colorful. I know not everything is very happy in the country. I know that, but it makes it seem so much more happy in a way. And it's such a rich culture. It's absolutely amazing. I would love to visit the country. For my research, I'm not sure how much helpful it would be, although the group of fungi that I study, there are several Indian researchers that work on the same group, but those are not related to the ants. So that's more the point, because I really like to focus more on the ant part of this story. So I think for that, I should focus more on the area over here in Brazil. But definitely, I won't forget those fungi there. But for the country itself, it's such a cultural, mind-blowing experience. I would love to go there. Yeah.
I definitely hope that you do. And thank you so much for this chat. It was so enlightening for me.
You're most welcome. And if anyone still has questions regarding biology, regarding my research subject or anything, they can always contact.
Yeah, I'll add your LinkedIn link in the description as well.
Perfect.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.